And I suddenly realized that there was 51 miracles. Now, when I had completed the book in this version, I hadn't put that part in um, because I didn't realize what 51 what meant in numerology. And I found out later 51 is the divine number.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Spotlight brought to you by Apex Media Global. I'm your host, Monica, and today we are joined by Peter Boaz Jones, the author of the profound work, The Gospel of the Four. He spent from 1983 to the 2000s to really dissect and study the four Gospels in the New Testament, the Greek originals, and provide his commentary as to why they should be synchronized together. It's really interesting, and I'm really excited to get into it because it has 54 chapters, and I kind of want to go through each chapter. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica.
Okay, let's dive into it. So, like I mentioned, you have 54 chapters, and um, the book really presents the Gospels as a single continuous narrative. And you mentioned that writing this book took quite some time, like from 1983 to the 2000s, because of how complex the text was. So you took Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And can you kind of give us an overview, but maybe also the long story of why you think it was so complex?
Yeah, well, when you've got four separate gospels, and most of the time they say the same thing, then you've got the Greek, which is based on the original Greek.
Mm,
I had to check every word against the modern, the King James version text, making sure I didn't leave any word out,
mm.
and that it synchronized exactly as it was supposed to do. Um, which took, I was working as well, so I was only doing it in my spare time, having a day off now and again. Um, so it just took all that time, it's just, when you got four texts and you got to check it against the Greek as well, it just takes time.
Why did you pick the specific four gospels? Why the New Testament? Why not the Old Testament? Why not the Revelations, you know? Why those four?
Well, if I did that, I'd still be writing now. But the
Yeah.
point is, there's only four gospels,
hmm
and they all relate to the history of Jesus, basically, and the fact that um, that's the only record we really have
Mm,
of what Jesus did and what he said.
mm.
So, that's the only four ones I could choose, because there's only four.
Yeah. Um, I also said that I kind of want to go through each chapter, but at least I'll try because then I will have 54 questions. But chapter one, you began with the beginning of the gospel, with John's famous passage. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And you argued that this beginning is important because before the physical, we have the spiritual. So, what understanding of the spiritual realm do you hope the readers would gain from the opening chapter?
Well, basically, as we're looking at each other now, we're physical,
Yeah.
but we have a spiritual dimension in our heads. And John wanted to show that the purpose of the material was to eventually get us completely spiritual, so
Mm,
that we would have a spiritual body
mm,
that doesn't grow old and is aimed at eternal life. So John was trying to show that the physical is only the beginning. And, everything's based on that, basically. Going back to even the Garden of Eden, the tree of life was symbolic of the Holy Spirit, which they never took of. And it's all symbolic of trying to get more spiritual, that eventually that we can be born again of spirit. And that's basically it. I mean, some things is very hard to explain. We could say why, why, but there's many things we don't really understand. And that's just the premise of, from the material, we must go spiritual.
And what does it mean to be spiritual? Because I mean, in the 3D physical world, we will always have our flesh, and sometimes or most times we will wrestle our flesh. So how do we kind of come back to our own spirit?
Yeah, well, how can we say there's a process going on which is linked to our brain. A lot of the scriptures say that we must have the spirit within us, and also they say that the Father and Jesus will come to dwell in us, come inside our brains. And that's the process, basically. It's to make the world a better place. It's to make everything better in work, in the world, even though we've always had problems in the world. It's just an exciting thing for the ones he's called who understand that to progress further into a world which we can only get a glimpse of what to come. And as it says in Hebrews, everything's a shadow of on this earth. Everything's a shadow of heaven. So we can only speculate in some things, but we know that this isn't the only life. The physical life is just the start, and we must continue to think spiritually as things are revealed to us individually and as a whole in some cases. Yeah, that's the short answer.
I don't mind a long answer, but when you were writing the book, was it more like a cerebral process in the beginning and then it led you to a more spiritual, then it just started flowing? Or was it just it came to you and then it felt like a spiritual download and then you just started writing? How was that
Yeah,
process for
a bit of
you?
both, really. At the time, I was going through some problems, and I decided to emigrate to Israel, which never came off for other reasons. And I suddenly realized the things that I was looking at the wrong way. And this world, even though we have many problems in, governments and countries, it's not a bad place. And whatever country you may think, well, to escape to, you're going to have the same problems there as you get in other countries. So I decided to look at things a bit deeper, and that's when I started, checking up on these things and started, putting my own point of view towards it. Um, yeah, and it was just one of those things really that, as you say, came upon me really. Um, and once I started it, I could see a vast pattern, so much symbolism, especially with numbers,
Mm.
um, that I just had to carry on. Otherwise, I could be in trouble if I didn't. So it was a love. I love doing it, but at times, but very tiring. Um, but one has to carry on once one knows something. You can't, you know, you can't deny it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. And you kind of touched upon being called and also the symbolisms and um, the numbers. And that leads to my next question, because in chapter 6, um, the title, Jesus begins to call his disciples. You discuss the first five disciples were called in Galilee, and you highlighted the number five as the number of grace. So, um, how does the calling of these five initial disciples serve as a um, reference point for God telling us or calling us through grace?
Yeah, well, I found it interesting that number five is the number of grace, and that it started with the five disciples. Um, though Jesus went on to call many disciples, when you check towards the end, there was over 500 disciples. Um, but it's the initial story of um, though though we must try hard spiritually in everything we do. It's like a child. A child tries with the best knowledge they have at the time to be the best they can. And of course, as they get older and older, and even before that, of course, they make loads of mistakes, which is innocency. And it's the same with the way God is calling his disciples. Um, we come in fresh. We know a certain amount of things, but it doesn't stop there. And we shouldn't let it stop there. We should dig deeper and try and understand as much as we can. And that is really why God calls people. He's calling everybody, actually. And it's just a matter of the time of the calling, whether one is ready for the next step. But in the same sense, one must be ready all the time. So that's well, another short explanation as far as I can see it.
Hmm. Um, I wanted to follow up on discipleship, right? Just to kind of um, follow the topic. And like you said, you believe that Jesus is still calling, he's always calling his disciples one by one. And how does this calling manifest in the lives of modern day believers? And um, why do you think that these individuals must go through trials?
Yeah, well, it manifests itself basically. Um, the thing is, children know a lot of these things, simple things. Um, but we have to apply them eventually to work, to everything we do, to get a broader meaning. And the fact is, some people haven't come to that standard, and through us, on a different level, we hope that they also can come up to a certain level. And it's just a thing that spreads. They say the gospel spreads. And it's the same thing with character, with everything you do. You come to a commonality eventually, and you get to know who's spiritual and who isn't. Yet everybody can come to that level, if you like. Yeah, I don't lost my train of thought now, or
Um, Also on the topic about kind of being like children, um, and I wanted to ask, since we are made in the image and likeness of God, and that we are His children, and there's a certain innocence and naivety um, as children. So sometimes we make honest mistakes, and sometimes we do things that we don't mean to, but it doesn't mean that the love is absent. But also, like when some things are communicated to us as children, we don't really speak the language or an advanced language, so we kind of might not understand it. Basically, all of this to say is that I wonder if God is speaking an advanced language that sometimes as his children we might not understand sometimes or misinterpret or um, take it out of context or cherry pick and things like that. Um, so I was just wondering, it was just some theory that I had, but I wanted to ask you, do you think that's the case? Or do you think that different seeds are planted in us and it blooms in different ways and doesn't mean that one is right or one is wrong? It's all just part of the same God. That was a long question, I'm sorry, but um, I hope it made sense.
I think I mean, you see, we must realize that children die before they've had the ability to be able to choose, and at
Mhm.
a adult level. So I believe that there's various resurrections, and a lot of people will come back, let's say children and babies, and carry on from where they left off. If you understand what I mean. So I think everybody gets a fair chance. It's just that we live in different times and different uh, well, so areas in one sense, and all of it's coming together. Much of we don't fully understand a lot of it,
Mm.
but we can say why is there evil in the world? Why do people die? But it was never meant for people to die. It was just that um, the system from the beginning was that someone took the wrong choice, um, that they weren't ready for the next step. So the fact that there are steps we can take, we shouldn't sort of be big-headed and think, well, I'm living longer than everybody else. That means I'm good because as we get older, we can have more problems, we can have more health issues. So it's all balanced out in one way. And the only way I can look at it is we have a father, and only the father knows what level we are at as his grown-up child.
Mm.
Um, and that's it. Um, Obviously, if you ask more questions, I can answer it more. But just on the one question, That's all I can give on that at the moment.
Yeah, I get it. So what I'm getting is, and you can clarify, is that God speaks to us in a way that you we would understand because he knows our level. He knows how old we are spiritually. So he meets us where we are. Is that right?
Yeah, um, but at the end of the day as well, it depends what God wants us for. I mean, I'm 80. I think I'm 81. Yeah, I'm 81 now. But um, I don't know how long. You know, to be honest, I'd like to go now. Because to see what's next. You
Yeah.
know, uh, I mean, nobody wants to suffer. Uh, young or old. So I don't know what I mean. I'm blessed. I am blessed. I can't ignore the fact I'm not blessed. But
Mm.
um, is it the reason here? Am I here now just to speak to you for this video? You see, uh, who? Well, I don't. I hope so. Um, uh, and that's it. We've all got people we know who, if anything happens to us, it affects the other person. Um, so we can't really know why some people carry on, some people do this. It's just the fact that the Father and the Son knows what's best for us in the whole outcome,
Mm.
um, and we just have to trust, uh, and that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, makes sense. I think it also reminds me of chapter 9 in your book, the Sermon on the Mount, and chapter 18, the parable of the sower. You agreed that Jesus related to people by using simple parables. However, you also said that Jesus spoke in parables to sift out the truth, those with the truth and those without. So, can you explain this crucial duality, like the dual purpose of the parables? Is it to simplify, yet also to differentiate?
yeah, both really. But it comes back to the other question we just finished. Um, when God calls people, or I should say, when people are interested in listening, it's like Jesus. You see, a lot of people think that Jesus spoke the parables because they were simple. Certain ones were simple. You get the analogy of salt and light. Simple, even child understands that. But some of them go a bit deeper, and it seems that Jesus, because the disciples were interested in Jesus, the Messiah, Jesus, the parables could go a bit deeper, a bit further. But the people who were just coming to see them, hoping they get a miracle.
Mm.
Um, Jesus had to, as it were, when he went deeper, they wouldn't understand, you see. So until they got rid of that attitude, they needed to, become interested in the figure of Jesus, who he was, and what he reflected the Old Testament. But if they were just interested in, being fed or
Mm.
being healed, which is not unreasonable, um, until they go one step further, they're never going to they're not going to get educated any further, you see. And
Mm.
I mean, one of the parables indicates that Jesus spoke, to some to make it clearer, and to others, it didn't become clearer because they either weren't ready or they got the wrong attitude at the time. And yeah, that's it basically. Yeah.
That actually makes absolute sense. And it gave me a lot of perspective as well. I mean, I shared my theory with you of like, oh, maybe God just kind of speaks to us in the language that we understand, but also in a way that it differentiates that we also have to want it. We also have to want to seek for it. So it's both ways. So
Yeah,
it
that's
makes absolute sense. Yeah. Just like any relationship. So I think that's fair.
yeah,
Um,
that's right. And
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I kind of want to shift gears and talk about the Pharisees that you talked about in chapter 30, the hierarchy of it all. You make a point that not all Pharisees were hypocrites and that they often served as the Jewish government who genuinely wanted the kingdom of God to actually come on earth. So, how does recognizing the Pharisees' roles as leaders who just really had good intentions and sought the progression of the kingdom change the common perception of them?
Um, well, basically, when I saw that Jesus dined with the top Pharisees 3 times, um, and because there were other people there, we get the perspective that actually most of the Pharisees were good people. Um, and the sad thing about it is because of a lot of people who only read parts of the Bible and don't read it properly. We've got an anti-Semitism thing going around. Um, blaming the Jews for killing Christ, isn't it? When it was only actually it was the Romans who killed Jesus anyway. Okay, the Pharisees wanted it, but it wasn't the whole Jewish nation. It was just a few at the top who tried to organize things in that way. And of course, the Jewish people basically get the blame for killing Christ because of that interpretation. Um, when the Pharisees were just ordinary people, just like, say, Catholics, Protestants in the hierarchy, and most people are good people, generally good people. Um, and I found it sad when I found that out. And it's very difficult to get across to some Christian people because they just insist the Jews killed, and they think that the Jewish nation, even today, killed Jesus. So, it's the old story of looking at things clearer when you're ready to for that adventure, if you like. But a lot of people aren't ready, and of course, when we see the Gospels, basically Jesus is calling a first fruit, which is like the first out of the nations, and the whole lot of the fruit. The first fruit's in spring, and the harvest is in autumn. And at the moment, we're still in the first fruit. Well, I think we're still in the first fruit phase. Um, and because everybody wants, a lot of people want Jesus to come back, to sort of solve everybody's problems and the world's problems. Yet when you look deeper, Jesus has already come back into the minds of the first fruits. And the thing was, Jesus was, well, if you believe God was Jesus in the Old Testament, God was spiritual anyway. You couldn't see him, but you could learn about him. So 4,000 years later, Jesus came in the flesh to help people to see that. But there's people still insisting he's coming back in the flesh again. But anyway, that's a side. I don't know how I got off on that. But anyway, I hope I answered that part of the question.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Would you be open to writing a book about, like Jesus' second coming?
Um, well, I would be, but the scriptures relating to that, which have been misinterpreted and in some places mistranslated. Yes, it would be interesting, but the thing is, I've got very busy with this book. It's took me all this time, and I just feel that there's too much to do with this book without, digressing, because there's so many things you could digress on. It's never
Mm.
ending, But yes, if yeah, I would be interested, but it's just everything's time consuming, Yeah.
But because I was just asking for a book so that I wouldn't have this interview run 10 hours long because you actually mentioned something really interesting that I want to get into. But um, just one question. What is one misconception that you think um, believers believe about the second coming that you think that maybe it's misinterpreted?
Well, I've seen the actual second coming. If you understand Revelation, the last two chapters in Revelation,
Mm.
which it even says the Father and the Son are coming down to the earth, and the earth is virtually burnt up. So we see a spiritual time. That's the second coming, you see, but it's spiritual. It's heaven coming down to earth, or earth being absorbed into heaven. So that's the second coming when everything is spiritual. I mean, I don't understand everything spiritual because I think, well, okay, what sort of we have the same bodies, we stay young, or what? So that's what I think the second coming is. Um, it's a spiritual dimension which hasn't happened. Well, it's not going to happen until the world. I mean, even scientists know that the world's going to burn up. The sun is going to, get that. It's going to force the earth to burn up. They're saying millions of years yet, So, but that's what I believe that Revelation is saying. That there comes a time when even the Father comes down to heaven. There'll be no more death, no more, no more death, no more illnesses. But that's not the actual that's not the second coming, as a lot of Christians look at it. They think that Jesus is going to come back and sort all the government's problems out. Things are going to carry on the same physically, but they're just going to get better. But in one way, they are getting better through the first fruit individuals who who are even in government. I mean, you might not agree with President Bush, not Bush, Trump. I mean, but he certainly is a spiritual person, even though a lot of people say he's of the devil. But um, but that is the kind of thing that things are happening through. Um, and I think the second coming is that what's pictured in the last two chapters of Revelation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to ask more questions, but I do want to go back to your book, The Gospel of the Four, chapter 35 specifically, since we're already talking about the spiritual realm, the work of the Spirit. And you were really meticulous about the timing of events, like you know, Passover, tabernacles, rededication, but summer was often missed out. Yet it is when profound comments were made. So why was it important for you to kind of mention the exact time of the year?
Yeah. Well, I never planned, and still I started studying in it. I never thought about it, and as I was studying, it just came to light. Um, and we see that um, because Pentecost was missed out, It's only mentioned once in the Acts of the Apostles, about the gospel going all over well, it was already going over the Mediterranean anyway, but it went further then in Acts. The coming of the Holy Spirit at that time, particularly on many people, well, thousands actually. But the way the Gospels are written, it appears, because we can't see the Spirit, we can only see the how can I say? We can only see the works of the Spirit, the deeds of what people do who have the right spirit. Because we can't actually see it, the Gospels missed it out. Mainly for us, once again, for those who are thinking a bit deeper, to check, because Pentecost is the most important holiday, or holy day as you want, because it's when people receive the Spirit. I mean, we can receive the Spirit anytime. We see it as we grow up, children grow up, even they have a little bit of God's Spirit. And it depends on how they act, how much more they get of it. And it can wane, they can lose it and come back again and all. But the purpose of the Gospels was to show that the most important holiday was actually missed out. But it wasn't missed out, because within the texts, it's quite clear to see, if one delves a bit deeper. And it's like we're going back to the parables. We need that. One needs that little bit of interest to be able to understand that. And that's why I think it's important.
When you started writing the book, I'm sure you were curious about a lot of things. You had questions. Did writing this book, did this journey answer some questions for you? Or did you also have some questions unanswered? Because again, his ways are higher, and sometimes we can't really know.
Yeah. Well, as I was going through it over the years, I couldn't believe how clear it was, because it happened in many stages as I went through it. I mean, I started the book when there was only 42 miracles up to Jesus' resurrection. But then someone advised me to take the whole scenario in. And I suddenly realized that there was 51 miracles. Now, when I had completed the book in this version, I hadn't put that part in, because I didn't realize what 51 meant in numerology. And I found out later 51 is the divine number. So I had to add it to the end of the book, which is linked to how many books there are in the Bible. And when you put the Old Testament books and the New Testament books together, there's 51 again.
Wow.
According to the Jewish record. Catholics have a few more books in the Bible, but according to the original Old Testament Jewish record, which we all go on basically, there's 51 books altogether. Plus, I never realized that in the Old Testament, the word fear comes up 51 times as well. So do not fear. It says do not fear 51 times, and I didn't know that until I came across it after I'd finished. So I had to add that, and the book's got that in now. But so many things like that came out, and we can argue, well, how do you know there's 51 miracles? Well, you can only. I didn't purposely make it into 51; it just came about. And of course, some would argue and say, well, there's only 48, but you can argue and check, and that's the beauty of it. If you want to, if you want to find out more, you can check. check on it. And I certainly wouldn't, I didn't make all that up. Yeah, I don't know whether I got gone off the question there, but
That is so interesting. 51.
yeah,
Can you share another like instance where everything just added up, like numerology and
yeah,
everything, like the 51?
yeah. Well, it started with 42 because Jesus's ministry lasts. You can check that Jesus's ministry lasts for 3.5 years, which is 42 months. Also, the whole of Revelation is depicted in 42 months. The prophecies and some of the things there, which are only a warning. A lot of people think all those things are going to happen, one thing after another, when the whole book was just a warning. It is warning to people in government who know these things as well. So these things don't happen as are pictured in Revelation. This is only a bad scenario, what could happen in Revelation. And because you get so many Christians that they say, oh, unless you believe this and that, you're going to go through the tribulation and all this. And, they get sort of all proud that they've got some misconstrued truth. So 42 was a surprise for me. I'm just trying to think, because there's a lot of others. I mean, 7 is quite, and even 40 is quite significant. Yeah. So that was 42 was the other one.
That is so interesting. Wow. I just wanted to go back a little bit. I don't know if I got it right. Are you saying that the revelation is something that could happen, not something that will happen?
Yeah, I think it's a description because we really going back to Matthew 24 and Luke, was it Luke 21 and Matthew 13, where we've got well, a lot of Christians say the end of the world, which everything transpired in those 3 chapters, except that the Jesus returning. Because people read it and say, well, that's going to happen again. There's going to be wars. There's always been wars. There's going to be pestilence and all that. And Revelation is tied to those 3 chapters as well, but as a warning. And I don't think people will be so stupid, and those in government, even like Trump's trying to sort the war out in Russia, which I think is not very far away in sorting out. Because the atom bomb has changed the whole scenario of the world. You do get people, we're going to have a World War III again, and they think, oh, Jesus, come back and stop it, But as far as the way I look at Revelation, it was a scenario that John was revealed to John, who, by the way, is the first one who started the gospel in John 1, and the last one to finish the gospel, the last 2 chapters in Revelation. So I just think it was a warning for everybody. And because a lot of the Jews, when the Romans ransacked the temple, they escaped. Not everybody got killed. And it's the same in the last 2 world wars. But I don't think, you see, I believe the Western nations have come to a high point, and we need to progress the undeveloped nations more. And that's the process. I mean, I don't know when it's going to end or what, but that's the actual, if you like, the gospel process. I mean, some people say, oh, you're talking blasphemy. But the point is, the gospel message was meant to go forward. It meant to save lives. And that's what I believe it's doing. Though Donald Trump said, he saved hundreds of thousands of lives, which I agree with. But it the physical is only a starting point, and it's not so important as the spiritual. Um, so that that's the way I look at it. I think there's enough people in the world who understand, um, if you like, revelation. Not that they might even know about it, but they understand the message that John was trying to get across.
Mm.
That we've got to be careful. Yeah. So,
Yeah, makes sense. Um, I once again want to shift gears a little bit, and talk about chapter 49, Jesus' death. Um, the concluding ridicule. You highlighted two significant events, the unbroken bone prophecy and the stroke of despair. You said that the stroke of despair was necessary to diminish the blood from his body for Jesus to be the perfect sacrifice. So basically, adhering to the Old Testament. Can you kind of summarize the significance of the blood diminishing and the bones remaining unbroken?
yes. Well, it was the Old Testament. The Old Testament um, system that said that not a bone of when you're sacrificing the Passover lamb, no bone was to be broken, and that in the way they sacrificed animals, most of the blood had to be gotten rid of. Um, and it's true, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I'll jump into something else then. But the point is, Jesus had to fulfill that as well. He fulfilled everything. I mean, if that wasn't mentioned, it didn't mean to say he hadn't fulfilled other things, and people could have accepted it, But um, the fact that no bone was to be broken, uh, and we see with the stroke of the spear, Jesus was on the cross. You can check this out from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock because he had to be buried before the Sabbath started when it's dark. So the fact that this all happened, that Jesus only was on the cross for 6 hours, there are some Christians be up in the arms. They say, well, Jesus suffered more than anybody, which in one way, okay. But in another way, a lot of people suffered a lot more because the Romans made the crucifixion to last it could last for 3 days. You could be on the cross for 3 days. So in mercy, God inspired probably the Roman centurion to throw the spear in mercy, um, because he could see the spectacle of Jesus dying, and it was all planned out anyway. Um, and Jesus fulfilled absolutely every detail of the Passover lamb. And as John says in Revelation, Jesus was a Passover lamb or sacrificial lamb from the beginning of the world. So the first fruits would have understood that knowledge. They wouldn't have had to actually seen it physically because they would have seen it spiritually.
That makes sense. That makes absolute sense. And as much as I want to ask so many questions, I do have three more left, but they're
Right.
more about what you would do or what advice you would give to our viewers or your readers or just anybody. So it's what would Peter do? I have three scenarios, and basically it's what would Peter do? So the first one is, like the parable of the workers in the vineyard. Have faith and become happy. Tomorrow is another day. But what if someone just came to you and needed counseling, and that person was struggling with jealousy or greed because they felt like others had more rewards than they were entitled to? Like, I deserved it more than them. What practical step would you advise to that person, what would Peter do or say?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Other than, we say to people, go and get counselling. But the person's should realise that everything is for a purpose, and they should realise that if they had the faith, they had the faith of understanding, if they would just consider it a bit more deeper, a lot of the things that they're hoping for or wishing for would eventually unfold. And it's very difficult because everybody's at a different stage who, might be jealous of this and jealous of that. It's like how can I say, it's like the people we have coming from different countries. No, they want the best things in life. They've had a hard life. We call them, illegal immigrants. And they get very jealous. They want things quick. And life just teaches them that they have to wait, and it's far better to wait. If you have a better attitude, all these things come to you more easily. And, it's very, I mean, if I say I was, it's like yourself. I mean, I don't think you've got many problems, but it'd be very interested to meet you, but be honest. We could help each other. But what I'm saying is, until you meet somebody who's got that jealousy streak, you can't really know, because everyone's not the same. You can't really know how you could help them until you hear a bit more about their life, the background and things. You just have to show them there is a better way. It's very hard, very hard. Yeah.
That makes sense. A shift in perspective, I guess. So the second question is also something you touched on a while ago, that we live in a troubled world. And you also addressed it in your book, the chapter being vigilant. If you could give a piece of advice to help people remain vigilant and focused on, just focus their gaze on God, what would it be?
Yeah, well, that's coming back to the three chapters I mentioned when they call it the Mount of Olives prophecy about the end of the world. The point is that everything we've spoken of today is about being vigilant, being ready for new knowledge, for receiving more knowledge as one goes on, and being vigilant that nothing stops you being that way, whether it's bad luck, the news, because we in these Western countries, we don't get war as such. Those in the other, the poorer countries, even now, they're in that war with each other. So to them who are being called, I mean, the vigilance becomes more in the sense of being careful. But to us, we just have to make sure we don't lose faith in the knowledge we've got so far, and to keep vigilant in not letting anything distract us from what we know and what can happen in the good sense. Because it's very easy to get, one can be depressed, one can have, if you like, manic depression in one way, but sometimes it only lasts for, a few hours, one day. But that's what we have to be vigilant about, not to let those things overcome us. So it's about overcoming, that's it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. last question. We already talked about, sifting out the truth, simplifying yet differentiating. But you also caution against allowing extra meanings from others to lead to confusing ideas, basically, kind of probably cherry picking the gospel. So if a passage seems overly complicated because, human beings, we get subjective confirmation bias, etc., etc. What is your practical advice for reading the text to make sure that you stay true to the gospel and to the actual meaning?
Well, I see that one mustn't take everything out of context. So many people take things out of context and they come up with it. Well, different churches, different, and the whole point is if they, it's like the parables are sent to different people. If they believe that they're seeking truth, or probably some people think they've all got the whole truth already, and they don't want to go any deeper, and they condemn anybody else who goes away from the slant they've got on it. But if that's but really, if they really want to know the gospel, is to get the four texts. I've simplified it so you don't have to keep turning over 4 pages all the time. Though you can check it, you've got to check it if you don't believe it. So, but it saves a lot of bother because you've got the whole text in front of you, and you can do this yourself. You just check with the four texts together, see what what they're saying, and it just comes down to looking deeper. Really, that's all it does. If you've got the spirit of wanting to see a bit more, other than convincing yourself, you've got the whole truth. I
Mm.
mean, even I, I'm okay on the what I've done, but I can't convince myself I've got the whole truth at the moment, as far as I know. But there's many things I don't understand still. Like what it's going to be like in heaven. Uh, you know, obviously we're going to have houses somehow because Jesus says about the mansions. But how's that formulating? As it says in Hebrews, it's a shadow. So if I can see a shadow, that's okay. But I'd like to build on the shadow if I could. Um, so, even myself, I've got the whole truth at the moment, as far as I know, but not completely. Um, does that answer it, or have I gone off the tangent again?
No, abs I love it when people go on tangents. Yeah, so no problem at all. But I guess it's a good segue to let our viewers know where can people find your book.
Yeah, they can find it on Amazon. Uh, the printer is Author House. They can find it on Author House, but they can find it if they just put it in Google. It comes up about 20 times in different places.
Yeah.
So there's no trouble in it's on most uh, links on the internet. So they should have no trouble. Uh, I mean, if they want to come on Facebook, I can tell them as well. But
Yeah, well, we'll link everything in the description when this video is uploaded so people can access your work and know where they can also get in touch with you if that's possible. But Peter, I wanted to thank you so much. I don't feel like this time was sufficient, to be honest, to really dissect the profoundness of your work. I had so many other questions, but I hope I can talk to you again soon. I don't know if you'll add more to it or like I don't know. But it's really exciting and I'm
yeah,
really grateful to have had this conversation with you. And I guess to our viewers, if you guys enjoy more conversations like this, you can check our channel. There are plenty of interesting stories that I think would resonate with you. But this conversation has resonated with me. And Peter, once again, thank you so much for spending your time with us.